What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another community reaction video. Today, guys, we're gonna be talking about Rogue. Okay, let's be real. We're all just waiting for the finale. But this was still a good episode. It was good, I thought. If you guys didn't see, my reaction for Rogue went up a few days ago, and I liked it. I thought it was pretty good, but I didn't really have a lot to say. And after watching the episode and rewatching it again, I still don't really have a lot to say. Because it's good. It's a good episode, but out of everything that we've gotten so far in the series, yes, even Space Babies, this episode feels the most standard so far. The most ordinary Doctor Who episode. And this should not be seen as a negative, because Doctor Who needs episodes like this, where it isn't the end of the world, end of the universe stakes, or it isn't super serious and depressing like 73 Yards. There needs to be that strong spirit of adventure at least somewhere in the series. And here it is done perfectly. It has a dynamic, entertaining, engaging and sweet storyline, a cool new character, great interactions between the whole cast, good comedy, incredible production design. Overall, I could not ask for anything more. My favorite shot of the episode is right here. I love it. The monsters are great, the protagonists are great, and it even has some nice badass I am the Doctor moments sprinkled in there too, because we all love those. But being real, out of every episode so far, which I feel have all had just a lot to chew on, this episode you kind of just watch it and then you move on. Still really good though. In my initial review, I felt maybe I came off a bit too negative. I was still positive in the review, but I feel like I focused maybe on the two small negative tidbits that don't really matter and no one cares about. Even me, I don't even give a shit about that stuff. I really enjoyed the episode, but so far, out of this series, which I have really enjoyed every episode of, it is my least favorite. Which is a testament to how bloody good this show is, because in certain other series, this will be in the top 3. Let's all give a massive hand to Kate Herron and Bryony Redman. They both did an incredible job. Hopefully they come back. Maybe to write a follow-up with Rogue in it. Let's talk about what I said in the last video. So, in my initial review, my initial first impressions, as it were, I said that I didn't think Rogue was coming back. Well, more accurately, I assumed that he wasn't. And from what I've seen in the community reaction, well, hey, a lot of people think the complete opposite. A lot of people think he is definitely coming back, confirmed. Which it is actually not confirmed. They've wrapped on series 2, and unless they've kept it real under wraps, he ain't in it. But Captain Jack only returned in series 3, so maybe he'll be in series 3. I don't know. I've watched The Unleashed, and they do kind of at least hint that he might come back, which I personally think is more than the episode does. I mean, if the Doctor could just find him, why didn't he just press the button on Ruby? Go in the TARDIS, find her. But who knows? Either way, I would like the character of Rogue to come back. I'll be perfectly fine if he doesn't. I'm down for all of these one-off romances the Russell T Davies era are known for, aka Madame de Pompadour, Kylie Minogue, who's also in this episode, by the way. So what do you think? Do you think he's coming back? Do you think he's not? I don't mind either way. I'll be happy if he showed up, and I wouldn't be unhappy if he didn't. Does that make sense? I don't really have a lot to talk about in this episode. So let's dive in to your guys' thoughts. Let's see if you can all change my mind on the episode, because even though I liked it, according to all of you, this is one of the best episodes we've seen in a long time. But to be fair, you know, people have been saying that about basically every single episode since 2015. Anyway, let's dive right in. And here we are from Suarez9108. He says, the Doctor bringing back the whimsy into Rogue's life is what made their relationship so compelling to me. He was clearly an energetic and dorky guy before losing his partner. The fact that he got his name from D&D, his music playlist, and his reaction to the TARDIS proves it to me. The Doctor just showed him that despite losing people, you can still be positive. Yeah, I 100% completely agree. All of the really nice touches to show that Rogue isn't the spiky porcupine shell that he first seems to be just from the original scene, their interaction. But I think all of those inclusions really fit well into developing this character. Now, someone could argue that that is an archetype, a kind of trope of a character. And while that might be true, I don't really care. tropes are not inherently bad. In fact, tropes are kind of cool. I love tropes. But yeah, I really like the attention to detail they have here to show that they've really thought about this character, even if the character is basically an OC. Flippy says that whole sequence where the Doctor was refusing to let Rogue turn off the music in his spaceship was so freaking funny, man. I also love that the Doctor sings "Come With Me" when entering the TARDIS. What a perfect choice. There's a double entendre there if you pick up on it. But yeah, as a fan of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I too love that inclusion. When I first watched the episode, for some reason I remembered the music scene where they played Kylie Minogue. I remember that taking like so long. And then when I rewatched the episode the next day, it was like brief as hell. It was like 20 seconds. So I suppose that's one of the negatives of watching at 1 in the morning. That was actually a late video to go out. I didn't watch that episode as soon as it went out. Of course I tried to, but for whatever reason, on a Friday night at midnight, my life suddenly gets 10 billion times more busy. Hopefully I will be able to catch The Legend of Ruby Sunday when that goes out. I am very looking forward to that episode, you guys. And I can see if I can get that video out as quickly as I possibly can. Owen Thompson says, I never thought we would see the Schalke Doctor be canonized. Yeah, so this is one of those big lore drops in inverted commas because no one really knows what the fuck is going on. I did notice it. I mentioned in my video, I did notice that was in there. I thought it was kind of cool. I don't really think it's a big massive deal though, if we're talking about the story of Doctor Who. It's just a cool Easter egg. When I was a kid, this is stuff that would happen in Doctor Who kind of all the time. When I was a kid, I would watch stuff like this. It used to excite me to no end, especially when you would see it in the DVD documentaries. They would show clips like this and be like, oh, and this connects to this and blah, blah, blah. And little old me would be like, oh my God. But I will say, personally, now maybe this says a lot about me as a fan, but I didn't recognize him as the Schalke Doctor, at least initially. By the time I uploaded my video, I did. In my commentary track, I recognized him as the Curse of Fatal Death Doctor. Now, of course, that was Rowan Atkinson, but then he evolves into a bunch of other British celebrities, including Hugh Grant, who I knew that if I mentioned the name of the actor in the video at 1 in the morning, I was going to call him Hugh Grant, so I didn't even bother. I knew his name was Richard E. Grant in the recesses of my mind, but when you record that early, I already know that I was going to mess it up, so I was just like, I won't even say it so I can edit in his real name once I finish recording. Because even when I'm not tired, I call Richard E. Grant Hugh Grant. They got the same last name. No, but the Schalke Doctor is canon now, as confirmed by Rusty Davies on Instagram. But what I found interesting is that apparently, now I'm getting this information secondhand from the Discord server here, people, but apparently the VFX artist claimed that it was based on the Curse of Fatal Death Doctor, and they actually brought him in for a photo shoot. And so I feel vindicated in that I was technically right. The thing about Doctor Who canon is when people say, oh, I never thought this would be canon, I never thought this would be uncanon, the truth is kind of everything's canon. I mean, you could kind of just believe whatever the hell you want. Scream of the Schalke, I've always liked Scream of the Schalke. I've never really been one to say, oh, it isn't canon necessarily, because in a way it's just its own branching timeline. It's got the 9th Doctor, it's got Derek Jacobi playing the Master, it's even got David Tennant in it. He's not playing the Doctor, he's just playing some random guy. But I've always liked it, and I never thought that there was a real reason why it couldn't be included. But then again, I'm the type of guy to think that New Zealand car adverts can also be included in canon. But yeah, it was really cool to see. I really like moments like that. Cool scene. Crow Batman I Am the Night says, Rogue felt like River and 12 all over again. I loved it. It was a very fun dynamic. I must say, personally, I am not a River Song fan. I like River Song as in I like Alex Kingston. And I like River Song in that I like a lot of the episodes that River Song is in. And I like the performance. So there's a lot of stuff I like. I just don't really like River Song though. I've never been fully convinced. I found out recently that it was intentional that River Song kind of traps the Doctor by effectively telling him, I'm your wife in the future, because of the way time works and fixed points. She effectively traps him into becoming her husband, whether he likes it or not. It's the whole time traveler's wife situation here. I always thought I was reading too much into it because I was like, this relationship is kind of forceful. But also, that's just how Stephen Moffat writes women, people. Crowbat here mentions 12 and River Song. I, of course, don't really like the Husbands of River Song episode. I think it's one of the cheapest episodes of modern Doctor Who ever, which is saying a lot, especially for Series 9, right? Like, Series 9 looks incredible, but with the Husbands of River Song, they're using these really cheap looking small sets. They're reusing the Trap Street. They've got the painted on doors, like, what? I understand the budget probably run out, but then you have the return of Dr. Mysterio as the next episode, and it's like, you can say a lot of things about the return of Dr. Mysterio, but it's not cheap. There's some really cool stuff that they're doing in there. You compare it to the Husbands of River Song, it's got that goofy ass green screen. All of the sets look cheap as hell, they're tiny. It's just a goofy ass episode. I understand it's meant to be a comedy, and I like one of the comedic bits. I kind of like the scene where the 12th Doctor goes into the TARDIS, and that's about it. The rest of the episode is just kind of ass, like, straight up. It's filler, nothing really happens in it, and I'm not convinced at all by the 12th Doctor and River Song's relationship. To me, it seems like a real dud note to end the story arc on, because up to that point, yeah, I wasn't super invested in the River Song Doctor dynamic, but all of their episodes had been kind of bangers. You know what I mean? Silence in the Library, great episode. Time of Angels, Flesh and Stone, incredible episodes. Good Man Goes to War, great episode. Angels Take Manhattan, great episode. Name the Doctor doesn't count, that's not really her. But even that is better than the Husbands of River Song, which I feel like even the poster looks like a cheap Photoshop work. It's just a bad episode. So personally, I will put Rogue above River Song. But with that said, I've never been a massive fan of Doctor Who romances. I was surprised at how quickly I connected with this one. I think I'm in a weird spot when it comes to romance with Doctor Who, because I'm not against the idea necessarily. I just think it's never been done well. I agree when I hear Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat talking about, oh, you know, all these young women, they go off with the Doctor, he's like this incredible man. Of course they're going to catch feelings. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And then it's just never done well. I think the 9th Doctor and Rose was the closest it was to being done well, and I would say Clara and the 11th Doctor is the furthest away from it being done well. And I know that people have been talking about it a lot, so I would say the 13th Doctor and Yaz is about in the middle of it being done well. It falls right flat into the completely inoffensive category, at least I think. Can't really imagine getting mad at that relationship. But then again, people will literally get angry at Chris Chibnall tying his shoes, so it doesn't really matter what he does. You know, it was a nice, sweet relationship. They had a bunch of really nice moments. I guess because they didn't kiss, it doesn't count. 12th Doctor and Clara didn't kiss, that still counts. I don't think you need a kiss for the relationship to count. Of course, sometimes a kiss is nice though. Majestic World 19 says, I really enjoyed Ruby in this episode. A lot of her scenes made me laugh. And I replied to this comment saying, same. I didn't mention it enough in the video, but this is probably Millie Gibson's best outing yet. And I still 100% hold that opinion. She is very damn funny in this episode. And it's not just the battle mode, it's not just the instant strictly earrings. I just think a lot of the mannerisms, performances, all of that were really goddamn solid in this episode. The scenes where they speak over each other, the scenes where she talks with Emily. I said in my review, and I still hold it, I really enjoyed that plot line between the two of them, and I wish that Emily had actually managed to be a real person, because A, I like that character archetype, but B, I also wanted an arc for that character. I wanted them to help save the day, because in retrospect, when you look at it, they're kind of a pointless character. They exist for some comic relief in some of the earlier scenes, someone for Ruby to talk to, and the battle mode scene at the end. But I think it would have been really cool to have her somehow play a role. Oh, I get it though. Rogue needs to be the big hero. I guess you'd have to rearrange too many things for it to work. But I really like that character, man. I like the actress too. Yeah, and with Millie Gibson, it's even the stuff where it's like, I think you've seen enough. I'm from the future. Like, that stuff is just funny, man. Also, now is probably a good time for me to say my theory. Let me know in the comments if you agree with this. The more I think about it, the more it becomes clear to me. I think that this episode, Rogue, was meant to come directly after Space Babies. And hear me out, the Regency England era, that's probably the time period that Ruby would most want to go to first. So it makes sense that they would start the episode there as episode 2. We have all of those I am the Doctor moments, which are customary for the start of the season. Ruby only mentions Space Babies when she's talking to the Doctor about the stuff that they've done. There's a flashback to presumably the conversation that happens after episode 1. And most convincingly of all, in my opinion, in The Devil's Cord, the Doctor says that Ruby is from June 2024, and the only episode apart from the finale that was going to air in June of 2024 is Rogue. So I think these episodes switched slots. Do you guys agree? Do you think I'm just chatting shit? Let me know in the comments below. I definitely understand why they made the change though, if they made the change, because The Devil's Cord is a much stronger episode. Actually, the further we get away from it, the more I think The Devil's Cord might be my favorite of the series, and I know that that is high praise because 73 Yards is literally a fucking masterpiece. But I just feel like The Devil's Cord, man, I feel like that's just quintessential Doctor Who. From like a scripting standpoint, structural standpoint, everything standpoint, that's just like peak Doctor Who. It's not breaking any formulas. In fact, it's using the formula to perfection. That's the perfect way to use the Doctor Who formula. But anyway, this video is meant to be about Rogue. Meridian951 says, while I'm usually not a fan of Doctor Who romances, especially not ones this quick, the chemistry between the Doctor and Rogue was undeniable, and it was written pretty amazingly and acted even better. Aside from the romance though, this felt like a really good episode of Doctor Who. In fact, it felt like the most Doctor Who episode this season for me, which you'd think is surprising since this is from new writers and almost all the rest of the seasons are from ex-showrunners. Also, it seems like from watching the previews, you were surprised by pretty much nothing this episode, but as someone who didn't watch it, I thought the plot twists were really fun. I think the plot twists were really fun too, it's just, you know, my fault. I watched the previews, I shouldn't have. They were a bit predictable, cliche sometimes, but like I said, they felt very typically Doctor Who. Anyways, love this one. Only real criticism I have is the Rogue knew what D&D was, but somehow had never heard of cosplay. But the Cholder do know the word cosplay. A little silly, but hey, whatever, it was pretty funny. Yeah, that's one of those criticisms I mentioned in the last video. Like, it's a legit criticism, but I just don't really care. Just is what it is. If this was the Chibnall era, there would be 10-hour-long video essays talking about why the whole episode is bad because of that one tiny little thing. So I'm glad that most people can just look over those things now. About these new writers, they are both very, very good. I wouldn't mind to see them come back actually, but also you have to remember that these scripts are rewritten by the showrunners. Of course that initial essence is kept intact, but episodes like Face the Raven, let's say in series 9, even though that was written by a guest writer, even though it's uncredited, it is very likely that large portions of it were rewritten by Stephen Moffat. And this episode is probably the same, but it's still really good. I think part of the reason why it feels so much like Doctor Who is because it reads like either a Big Finish or a Doctor Who novel in a way. That's how it's structured. But also it has that series 2 factor, which is probably what turns me away from it just a bit. But a lot of people, they love series 2 episodes. They love episodes like Tooth and Claw and all of that, which is what this episode is kind of playing off, because if I remember correctly, these writers would have been 20 or so when that series was airing, so a real formative time in their lives, you know, late teens, early 20s. They're probably fans of the show, and so in a way this is ultimate fan fiction. I mean, obviously all of New Doctor Who is fan fiction, but this is like legitimate fan fiction in like AO3 Wattpad fan fiction, even down to the OC characters and the relationships and all of that. It really is like an AO3 fan fiction. Zemazian says, more of a strand the gay in a random dimension rather than kill the gay this time. What's this referring to? I hope it's not the last we'll see of Rogue. There is that line, he says, find me, which does hint that they will go finding him, but like when, you know? They're not going to find him next episode. Maybe the Christmas special? No. He's not coming back next season, so maybe in like series 3, which isn't commissioned yet. I feel this is a bit of a cop-out because they didn't really commit to whether this dimension would be death or if it wouldn't be, because the Doctor changes it from instant death to just being sent to a random dimension. But then when the Doctor is talking with Rogue, he says that's a good place to suffer, and then Ruby is there and they're acting like if the Doctor presses the button then she's gonna die. When if he could just find them wherever they're put, he should just press the button and then he could go and find them. Unless this is like a really, really slow burn, and it doesn't really need to be. To me, this feels more like the ending of Girl in the Fireplace or Voyage of the Damned, as I previously mentioned, those 2 episodes. Speaking of which, I got a comment, hopefully it should be in here, where someone said, rule of thumb, if there isn't a body, then they're not dead, which I just hate to say, for Doctor Who, this just isn't the case. Not only have we been seeing dead bodies of characters and they just come back with no explanation, most of the genuine actual deaths of characters, we don't see a body, because it's more tasteful that way. So while for television, I guess that's a normal rule of thumb, for Doctor Who it most certainly isn't. I'm not gonna say that there isn't even a high likelihood that Rogue is coming back. I feel like it's like 60-40 that he's coming back. But the likelihood that he's not is almost equally as real, is what I'm kind of saying. I don't really remember what the first part of the comment is talking about. Maybe it'll hit me in a bit. But anyway, on to the next comment. Chicken Winner says, reminded me of the girl in the fireplace. Yes, me too. But I like Rogue more than Madame de Pompadour. I think I do too. I hope he comes back. The scene where the Doctor just tries to smile through it really hit me, because I realized that he's been doing that the whole season when he was talking about the Time Lords or Susan, and it took Ruby to actually give him a minute to actually process it. She seems to bring out a side of him more akin to the 10th Doctor. I think this is all building up to something big when something inevitably happens to Ruby next episode, which the next time trailer for made look really interesting. Yeah, Ruby is in fucking trouble, bruh. I mean, I know that she comes back next season, but she's gonna be in some mortal peril here. Yeah, I also really like that scene because it plays into something with the 13th Doctor that no one talks about because no one watched those episodes. But that's basically exactly what she did, and that she didn't talk to anyone about anything. I mean, it took her a whole series to say that she was from Gallifrey, right? Usually the other Doctors, they're just spamming that shit. They're saying it first chance they get. Keep in mind, the 13th Doctor's companions didn't even know that she could regenerate. She literally kept everything so close to the chest, and whenever anything sad happened, she instantly walked away and then just pretended that it didn't happen. Which I think is a really interesting play on the character, and just really dramatic too, you know? It's one of those things where with the 13th Doctor era, you watch it, you're like, oh, please tell the characters, please tell the characters, and then she never does. It's tragic, man. It's a tragedy. It's good stuff. I'ma just say it. But yeah, I really love, and Ncuti Gat was more emotional portrayal of the Doctor. I really love this kind of emotional healing that he needs to go through, but my only problem with it is that this should all be accounted for under by generation, technically. The Doctor shouldn't really be acting like this anymore, technically. But of course, I have elected to just completely ignore the ending of The Giggle because it just makes everything worse, so why even bother thinking about it? For example, 73 Yards, the main criticism of that episode, like genuine criticism, is why the fuck is the 14th Doctor not helping? He's right fucking there. So there's actually no reason why he shouldn't be saving the day. Same with the Church on Ruby Road, to be honest. And with the whole season as a whole, under by generation, the 15th Doctor should not be having any trauma, turmoil, emotional problems whatsoever, because he should have gotten over it. Presumably he had infinite time to get over all of this stuff and he just didn't. So yeah, that whole ending is a complete flop that is just better off ignored. But if you do ignore it, then all of it works incredibly. So yeah, bit of a strange decision, that one. Can't wait for the retcon. Jeanette says it was enjoyable. Fun. The only real theme I saw was close relationships, how meaningful it is to have them, what do you do with yourself after you lose them, loss and grief. There was a little bit of character development for the Doctor, not a deep episode, but good. I mean, it's possible that the Doctor might go looking for Rogue, but I think he would more likely move on. Maybe in a future episode he gets some kind of clue about where Rogue is. 100% agree. Benjamin McAllister says, hope I'm not too late. You're not, my friend. While I wouldn't say it blew me away like the last few episodes, it was incredibly enjoyable. And it's nice to have a non-subtextual gay romance with the Doctor finally. Finally. There's been like fucking a billion, bruh. Looking forward to Rogue coming back. Him and the Doctor had great chemistry, and even though this wasn't written by Russell T Davies, it was the most Russell T Davies one feeding episode yet, which was nostalgia. Yeah, I completely agree. I think having a chill episode right before the finale is a smart move. Probably like a 7.5 out of 10. W. Also, as a D&D player, I love how dorky Rogue was underneath his glum facade, though you'd think a D&D player would be better at role-playing. Plot hole, episode ruined, fraud! Yep, 100% agree. Eric is Waiting says, at first I didn't like the relationship between the Doctor and Rogue, mostly because I wasn't sure if I liked the Doctor being this flirtatious and immediately falling in love, because I prefer the Doctor being more ace, but the more I thought about it, the more I liked it, surprisingly. Yeah, it's cool. Dobcool says, I tell you what is bad, the Doctor fell over dramatically in love with Rogue, that I half expected the Doctor to be like, no, swap back, I'd rather be with you than Ruby at the end. He literally had a flash to remind himself that he promised to keep Ruby safe. This is not something the Doctor would ever come close to thinking to do to his series companions, especially when the other option is someone he met like 2 hours ago, if that. I mean, I kind of see your point, but at the same time, you are kind of inserting that in. The Doctor didn't say, no, swap back, I'd rather be with you than Ruby. And that flashback wasn't to remind himself that he promised to keep Ruby safe, it was just, you know, his guilt. And so if that did happen in the episode, I can understand how you might get angry at that, but that didn't happen in the episode. So you're kind of just inserting that in and then getting mad at your own insertion, which I feel is, I'm just going to talk about the Chibnall era again, something that is very characteristic of criticism of that era. As you guys know, I have been on a quest to find criticism of the Chibnall era and to uncover why people actually dislike it. I feel like I came very, very close in my Chibnall era retrospective video, in that I think a lot of it does come down to the music. And I think linked to that, it's not just the fact that Murray Gold is gone and that Segun Akinola is here and he plays a lot more subdued soundtrack. I would say that a big problem a lot of people have with the Chibnall era, and is the big defining problem that a lot of people have that make it kind of unpopular, isn't all of these tiny nitpicks, isn't all of the, in quotation marks, bad writing. It isn't all of these moments that people talk about happen like 20 episodes in. It isn't Legend of the Sea Devils. It isn't Orphan 55. The reason people don't like the era as a whole is because it's boring. And I'm not saying I find it boring, but what I am saying is, after reading so many comments about why people don't like the era and ignoring all of those pseudo-intellectual video essays that don't actually give you the answer as to why people don't like the era, the reason most people didn't like the era is because it's boring. There is no hype. There is no epic storyline. There is nothing to theorize about. They are very clear-cut episodes that kind of just wrap themselves up at the end, kind of like this one. I mean, look at the highlights of Series 11. The historical episodes like Rosa, Demons of the Punjab. You watch them, you think, wow, what a powerful episode of Doctor Who, and then you just don't think about them at all, because there's nothing to kind of keep your mind engaged. There's no story arc. The character arcs are very low-key. I personally love and I'm really invested in the Ryan and Graham story. I've always liked that, and in fact I was a little bit disappointed in Revolution of the Daleks when they left, because I thought that it wasn't really done justice, because I was so interested in how it was done before, which is actually why I rewrote that whole episode. Yes, I rewrote a whole episode because of one scene in it that I didn't like. But yeah, a lot of people's criticisms with the Chibnall era do kind of just come down to it being kind of boring, because all of that little stuff, all of those bad writing criticisms that just aren't even bad writing, like most of the time they're just straight up made up, you guys would completely overlook that if the story was exciting, because that's just how it works, man. And a lot of the stories just weren't exciting. A lot of people don't really care about the historicals. They don't really care about episodes that aren't super epic and hype. You look at the episodes of the Chibnall era that are beloved, because there are about 7 in total, which I would say pretty much everyone agrees on are good, unless you are completely brainwashed beyond the point of reason and can't see any good in a frankly just pretty good era of Doctor Who. Those episodes are so popular because they have so many hype moments, so many what experiences that cause the audience to get genuinely invested in where the storyline is going to go. And so I think personally, now where I'm at, I have found the real reason as to why people don't like the Chibnall era, which isn't all of that stuff that people make up and basically cope to act like it is. It isn't because the Doctor is a woman either. It is because the soundtrack is really, really goddamn different and the storylines are kind of boring. I think it's those two things put together that make all of the other relatively minuscule errors, if we're being real, stick out like a sore thumb. Oh, I don't like the Chibnall era because there's this one scene where Jodie Whittaker says something bad. But for every scene with that, there's always an equivalent with David Tennant as well, in an episode where he also says something that's kind of stupid and you roll your eyes and you're like, what? I think people really underestimate how big an impact soundtrack can have on a story. And I personally really love Segun Akinola's soundtracks, and that's why I find myself connecting with the 13th Doctor story so much. But to a lot of modern Who fans who are really used to Murray Gold's bombastic orchestra basically guiding them through the scenes, what they're seeing is effectively the deleted scenes from the DVD box sets. If you've ever seen these are the sequences for the series 1 to 4 episodes, but without any music on them. And they are death, man. They're terrible. You take away the music from all of my favorite episodes, they become instantly shit, man. So yeah, I think that's it. That's my personal evaluation on why the Chibnall era was not well received. I've just realized this has completely nothing to do with the comment on screen, but thank you Dobcool for giving me an excuse to rant about Doctor Who as I always do. And the final comment from Kyle Reese says, I really liked this episode. It was a lot of fun, which I think is needed before the dramatic 2-part finale. I liked the character of Rogue. I think the relationship between them was slightly rushed, but I still liked their dynamic. I hope we see Rogue again. I don't think the Cholders were that great villains. They were okay for a story like this though. Richard E. Grant showed up at the hologram. My headcanon is that he's a pre-Hartnell face. That's the only place he can really fit in the timeline. I kind of wish we got to see the Doctor and Ruby arrive in the Regency era, kind of like in the Devil's Cord when they got dressed up for the time period. Overall, a really enjoyable, fun episode before the big 2-part finale. I'll give it a 7.5 out of 10. Yeah, I completely agree. On Richard E. Grant, I don't really feel like I need to put him in the timeline. I just kind of fit him in release order as the 9th Doctor. Yeah, we already have a 9th Doctor. Yeah, we've already seen the 8th regenerate into the War Doctor and then the War Doctor into a 9th Doctor, which means that there isn't really a place for him in the timeline. But he was released in 2003. That's just when I imagined the time period of where the episode was set. Maybe I should do a whole video on the Shalkaverse. Would you guys like to see that? Would that be interesting? I feel it'd be a lot of fun. And overall, if we look at the poll with 8.6 thousand votes, 42% of people voted the episode as good. With 32% of people voting the episode as amazing, 17% voting it as alright, and 8% of people voting that it was bad, which is pretty standard for the series so far. I think 7% has been the average on bad, which means that it's most likely that the same people are voting bad on every poll. I personally really liked it. I will keep rewatching it as the months go on, but it will probably remain my least favorite series 1 episode unless something really changes with the finale, which I can't wait for, by the way. I hope you all really enjoyed the video. Do not forget to leave a like and subscribe, and if you've got any theories for the finale, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. A huge shout out to Kyle Reese and a massive thanks to the members. With all that said, I hope you enjoyed the video and I will see you in the next one.